Good evening. It's 9 o'clock and it's time to start our webinar. Thank you for joining us for our next in our series, Get Ready, Get Set, Get In, Applying to the College of Your Dreams. I'm Kim Lifton, President of WOW Writing Workshop. That's me on the right in the pink, and that's Susan, my business partner on the left, and she's WOW's CEO. Just a little bit about us. I'm a journalist. I love a good story, and really, truly, I can get information on any one of you. And that often means finding the right sources to get accurate information on any topic, including college admissions. We always go direct to the source to bring you accurate information about the college admissions industry. Susan is a writer, an amazing writing teacher, so we're really lucky to have her doing the controls tonight on the webinar. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit more about our amazing guests. I'm excited to have two of them tonight to help you understand everything you need to know about and do to fill out the applications that stand out inside the admissions office. Margit Dow, that's her to the right, is a true admissions veteran. She's worked in college admissions for nearly 40 years and has been director of undergraduate admissions at Yale since 1983. She even earned her bachelor's degree there. When she isn't working on selecting the next freshman class, she hikes, gardens, reads, and tries to control the exuberance of her family's golden retriever, Aspen. Chris Warner, on our left, is the head of business development and client outreach for the Universal College application, which is used by more than 50 schools to streamline the application process. Chris, who's a total techie guy, is a graduate of Johns Hopkins, where he earned a BS in physics, a master's degree in engineering management. He likes music too. He likes reading about anything and is a huge Baltimore sports fan. For those of you unfamiliar with the variety of applications out there, many schools use different options. Some of them use the universal application, some use their own, others use the Common App, and many use a combination. Texas public colleges have their own system called Apply Texas. So does California. Yale uses the Common App. Now, before we go into the details of tonight's subject, I'd like to tell you a little bit about WOW Writing Workshop and what we do. These are very exciting times for WOW. We have big things happening, and we really want you all to be a part of it. We have wonderful new products, including free membership to our new website. It's for everyone, students, parents, educators, and consultants. During the webinar, feel free to send questions anytime, and we'll answer as many as we can at the end. Now, we need to find out just a little bit about you. So here's our first poll. I'd like you to check the item that best describes you. Are you a student, parent, teacher, school counselor, independent consultant? Let us know who you are. Thank you. Nice mix. Wow. A lot of students. I like that. School counselors are still on vacation. Okay. You have 38% students, 23 parents, 0 school counselors, maybe next month. 35% independent educational consultants and 4% other. I'd really like to know who those others are. Next poll. For high school students, would you please let us know what year you're going to be graduating? 2015 would be this year. I love watching the numbers. It looks like 2015 is winning the race. All right. The results are in. 74% this year, 11% the year after. In 2017, 11%. And other, I guess, not graduating, 5%. Okay, that's really good. That's good that we have a lot of students. Next poll. Which of the following issues are you curious about? I'd like you to check all that apply. Paying for college, relative importance of grades, test scores, other factors, creating a list of colleges to apply to, writing application essays is my favorite, and handling stress. Okay, we're going to close the poll. Ready, get set. Paying for college, 63%. Relative importance of grades, test scores, other factors, 56%. Creating a list of colleges, 48%. Writing college application essays, 93%. Well, you have come to the right place. Handling stress, 41%. We can help you with that too. So we're going to address all of these issues either today or in future webinars. And if you don't get your questions answered tonight, you can send them to us anytime in email, in the webinar space, and we will do our best to get you answers. Now I want to turn to Chris and start with what's the first thing a student should do when getting ready to apply to college? Chris.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on tonight. Appreciate it. Many years ago is when I applied to college, but being on the side of seeing the applications get processed, I've got to say the first thing a student should really do is stop and think about what they want in a college and what they want from their college experience. There are a lot of things to consider. Where do you want to go to college? Do you want to stay close to home, or do you want to go far away, somewhere in between? You have to think about what you want to study while you're in college. Majors, minors, and other programs will differ from institution to institution, so it's important to check that. Think about what experience you want outside of the classroom. Club sports and student groups will also vary from college to college. And once you start to think about these things, the best way to get more information about a particular college is to actually get in touch with that college themselves. Demonstrate some interest and make sure that you connect with them directly. Check their Facebook page, maybe follow them on Twitter, and definitely contact an admissions representative and ask them a few questions about their institution. The best source of information about a college is that college itself. That's one of the reasons that a few places in the Universal College application will actually link right to contact information for a college, just in case the student has any questions.
Okay, that's great. Marky, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I think those are all very good points. I think I would emphasize that maybe the first thing to do before you actually hit a computer, start doing search engines or looking at different college websites, is to do a lot of thinking and really begin a process of reflection. And you can do this with a computer in front of you. You can do it with a pad and pencil. You can do it sitting out on your lawn or sitting at the beach or whatever. And I think, just to echo what Chris said, you really need to think about what you're looking for, what you want to accomplish, what are your own interests, what are your own strengths. Are there things that you really hope to develop in college that you haven't had a chance to develop, either academically or personally? Are there things that you'd love to study that you've never had the chance to study, and you know that you want to go to a school that has that particular thing? Are you looking for a school that is a more service-oriented institution, because doing social service or community service or working for the benefit of others has been an important part of your life? Are you looking for a place that focuses on technology or technological innovation? That may dictate the kind of place. Is there anything that you want or don't want? Some kids really want to go to a place that has an active Greek life, and some don't want anything to do with it. How small and how big? And do you want to go to a college versus a university? I think a lot of students don't understand what the difference between those two is. A college is an undergraduate institution. A university has a college of some sort, an undergraduate body, and also has graduate and professional schools. So it can be a question of scale sometimes. Does it matter to you that you would have access to graduate departments, or the scale or the scope of the place that a full university might? I think it's very useful to talk through a lot of these things with people who know you really well. which may be a parent, it may be a teacher or a counselor or a close friend, but somebody who can just, you can use as a sounding board, who might say, you know what I think you also really are very good at, and I think that you are interested in developing it because you've mentioned that to me in the past, is such and such. And don't forget to think about that when you're looking at your colleges as well. So I think it's really there's a lot of thought that needs to go into the process before you start jumping in and pushing buttons and using search engines and that sort of thing.
I think it's great, Margit and Chris, but the students need to start thinking and beginning a process of reflection before they do anything. It's what we say about the essay, but it's before you even start applying. It's a good time to think. So thank you. That's a great point, and I haven't even thought of it that way before. So now, Chris, when should a student start getting their application together?
So the student should definitely begin as early as they can, as makes sense for them, probably in the summer. Just the UCA itself, we go live each year on July 1, and believe it or not, we have people apply for the upcoming terms on that very first day. You need to be very aware of the deadlines for the applications. If you're applying to an early program, so that could be early decision, restrictive early action, or early action, those deadlines are going to come up a lot sooner than the regular decision deadlines, maybe even in October or November. So make sure that you're game planning so that you hit those targets on time.
Okay, great. Margit, I'm sure you have something to add to that.
I would say that it's important to consider what your fall semester schedule in senior year is going to look like. There's some kids, for instance, who may be in a really big fall theater production. They may play a fall sport that's going to take a tremendous amount of time, and plan accordingly, because you need to be realistic. If you are thinking of applying early somewhere and it's going to collide with rehearsals or away games or something, you don't want to have that kind of conflict 2 days before your application is due. So if you'll be very busy, maybe you have a significant leadership position that's really going to take a lot of time at the beginning of the year, you need to try, again, echoing Chris, you need to try and accomplish as much as you can over the summer before your senior year begins. I think you all know that procrastination and leaving things until the last minute is not a way to feel under control, and it's not a way to avoid stress. And you want to do things to avoid stress and to feel under control, which means, start early, and then, better to have time at the end than not.
Sports practices start in August, and then it just gets more intense as they get into school, which means, when should they start the essays? Margit, you want to take that one?
I would say it's great if you can have one essay completed before entering senior year. And I realize a few of you are out there having heart attacks when you hear that, because senior year is starting in 2 weeks probably. But you know that the pace, everything is going to pick up once you head back to school. And right now you may still have some protected time and some quiet time. And so I would say that starting to work, if it's a common application school, those essay topics are, they're out there, they're on the common application. A lot of colleges will post their essay questions on their website, so kids can get going on them. And I would say to have a goal, within the next couple of weeks, to try and have one of your essays in pretty good shape. And if you block out some time, you should be able to do that.
Right, and the Universal College Application essay has been out for a while as well. And parents, students, just so that you know, it's not that hard to complete an essay in 2 weeks. And we have a timeline on our website that kind of spells out how you can do that. Chris, when do you think kids should start writing their essays?
Well, I agree with Margit. I think summer is when you should start with your essay, especially considering that a good number of the institutions you may apply to may have additional supplemental essays. You mentioned it, the UCA essay prompt, not only did it come out in the summer, but it's actually always the same, and it's always topic of your choice. And I know that other application services probably have a similar topic. So you can really get a head start by working on your essays before senior year even begins in the summer, knowing that those topics are available.
Okay. Margit, I absolutely love, you spoke earlier about the importance of reflection, and you can hear from, we always pick up on that. It's key in our approach and a lot of people's approach to teaching students how to think, teaching students how to write essays. So what is it that you look for in a college essay?
I think the most important thing is that it be reflective and personal and written about something that really matters to the student. I always tell people you should not start with what are they looking for. They is me. I mean, I'm reading an essay. I'm just a person. I'm trying to get a feeling for who the human being is walking the halls of X high school, and you are the best judge of sort of who you are and what you want a school to know about you before they make a decision. You are in the driver's seat for this part of the application more than any other part of the application, some of which you probably feel you have no control over, and you should not relinquish that control over the essay. I think the essay is really your chance to decide what you want to share with admissions officers, and you do have the best sense of what's been important to you, experiences that have meant a lot, how you got interested in an intellectual interest, what your relationship with your younger brother has evolved from into why you love going to Albania every summer to be with your Albanian grandparents. Why is that so special? I mean, whatever the topic, and it is not the topic that is important, it's how you deal with it. Whatever the topic, I think it is important to be personal, to use the word I, and to really try and be reflective, to really sort of show us something. What I hope to hear after reading the essay is the student, or while reading the essay, is the student's voice. And I think the authenticity of your voice is really critical. And again, you can have great essays on totally ordinary topics, and you can absolutely have awful, boring, just uninteresting essays on seemingly exotic topics, but you just don't do anything with them. I think.
So what are some of the?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just wanted to know some of the common mistakes. We've talked about them before, but maybe you can share them with the audience.
Well, I think that a lot of students write too superficial an essay, and they just try and cover too much, or they sort of stay at the surface and tell us what they did, but they don't get beneath it and tell us why they did it and how it affected them and where they were at the end of it. The what doesn't make you that special from other people who do that same thing. But if you can get at why this is why you do this and why you love it, or why you've hated it but stuck with it, that's what makes it your own essay. Not proofreading. I mean, it really is amazing to see stupid little typos in essays, and I mean, you just have to proofread them. You have to look at your essays and make sure there aren't errors. Occasionally we will have the wrong institution listed in an essay. I don't really want to know why you want to go to Brown University. I'm happy that you're applying there, but I don't really want to read about it. And one of the other ones that comes back from time to time is some students write about childhood experiences, which is fine, but they don't relate them to where they are now. And so you read an essay about something that happened or was going on in middle school, and you keep waiting for the, okay, so then what? Or where did you come? How does that relate to who you are now? And sometimes the essay ends, and I don't really want to know what you did in 8th grade. I want to know if that's important. Why did you choose to write about that? It must relate to your present life in some way, so get me there, get me to the present, because that's who we're admitting is your 12th grade self, not your 8th grade self.
Exactly. And Margit, as I understand it, you keep a file with essays that you love and have moved you and that have made you laugh. And I want to put you on the spot here, but do you want to make a quick comment about that to explain how important the essay actually is?
Yeah, I think again, because the essay really is the personal voice of the applicant, there are some, and again, some of them are about pretty ordinary topics that you get so pulled into the mind and life of that student, that at the end of it, depending on what they've written about, but I've been doing this for so long, I can still get tears in my eyes occasionally for an essay that is just so deeply personal and so thoughtfully written and so kind of moving in terms of what they're talking about, that I really feel like I'm there talking with that student. And in the end, I learn much more about them than that they had that experience. I'm learning about their capacity for reflection, their capacity for thoughtfulness, their interest in other people, or their ability to be passionate about something, or whatever. Those are the qualities that we kind of read between the lines. And probably the ones that I've kept over time are the ones that sort of convey a lot of that quality, those qualities.
That's great. Now we'll go back to some structural issues. What are and both of you can answer this, what are your top tips for staying organized, managing multiple applications, and staying on top of deadlines? Chris, you want to start here?
Certainly. So it's important to stay on top of your checklist. Right now in front of you is a screenshot of the checklist from the UCA, but whatever service you're using probably has something similar. The checklist has every required or optional item for the colleges to which you will apply. And you need to make sure that you know the deadlines and you're getting those items in on time. In front of you, you can see it's a quick one-glance view. You can see where you're at with each item and the current status. Once you make your game plan, make sure you're actually hitting your targets. For example, you probably want to ask your teachers and your counselors for their letter of recommendation or that school report right after first quarter grades are released. If you want some extra help, you can actually go to the UCA website and add the application deadline that you're applying for to your Google Calendar, iCalendar, whatever you may be using. And just make sure you give yourself plenty of time to get everything done right.
Okay. Margit, would you like to comment on this?
I guess one thing I would say is creating a spreadsheet for yourself on your computer or sitting on your desk that you fill in by hand, however you want to do it. There's so much to keep track of, and I think that spreadsheets are a great way to keep track of it. You can have a column for application deadline, you can have a column for which standardized tests are required, one essay or two, how many teacher recommendations, maybe add something for the date that you asked your teacher to write. Have you asked your teacher to write for that school yet? All of the different pieces, the date that you submit something, just so that at a glance you can say, okay, wait a minute, I've got those two application deadlines coming up in the same week. Which one am I going to do first? Which am I going to do next? I can use the same, maybe even, copy and paste the essay questions in or something so that you can keep track of which ones you could use in common. And I guess finally I would say, not to ask your mother to keep track of these deadlines. It is your job as the applicant, not hers. And if she offers to keep track of them or says, why don't I keep a copy of that spreadsheet, you should decline that offer and say, no, Mom, this is my responsibility. And then you need to take responsibility for that.
It's hard to respond to that one, Margit.
Yeah.
But do you have any words of wisdom for selecting teachers to write letters of recommendation? Chris?
I do. Actually, some of the best advice I've ever been given was from one of my Hopkins professors. And he said, whenever you need a reference or a recommendation, you should go to the person, ask them in person, face-to-face, if they can write you a good letter of recommendation. And if they say yes or agree right away, then that's great. But if there's any hesitation at all, just thank them for their time and move on to somebody who can give you a very resounding yes to that question.
That's good advice. Margit?
I would say don't immediately think of the teacher who gave you the highest grade. We're going to see that grade on the transcript. If that teacher doesn't really know you terribly well, or you've never had the chance to sort of talk to them outside of class or talk to them after class, or done anything except what goes on in the classroom, they may be able to talk about what a good student you are, but they may not be able to flesh out the rest of you as a student and person in the high school. And the best letters of recommendation comment not only on academic performance, but also on personal qualities and, who the kid is that they see when they stand in the doorway and watch you come into class and watch you talking to your peers. And, all of those personal qualities are also important, and teachers who know you pretty well can often give us very, very helpful information about that as well.
Okay. Any advice for minimizing stress between students and parents during application season? And I guess, Margit, we're assuming that the student is doing the work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, Chris.
Certainly. So I think the best way to limit stress between the parents and their students is for both the parent and the student to realize that it's the student applying to college, not the parent. Parents should let students drive that process and really leave it up to them to own it.
Okay. Margit?
Yeah, I think that's really critical. When I speak to groups and I say to parents and students, and I say what Chris just said, you need to remember who is going to college, and parents, it's not you. I always see a parent elbowing their spouse, and I think, okay, that's been an issue in that family. So it is critical to remember that it is a student going to college. And I would say, I guess I would have a couple of comments to parents and to students. To parents, I would say, don't make this a status competition. This is not about you talking to your friends at dinner parties about where your kid is applying. This is the time for you to be a champion for your child and not a critic. Keep in mind, as you're talking about colleges over the dinner table over the course of the next few months, be aware that your child is going to be picking up signals everywhere they turn, everywhere you speak, you're sending signals. And so don't sort of randomly always pull Stanford's name out of the hat, or Harvard's, or Chicago's, or Duke's, or Amherst, because if you do that, what you're conveying is that really those are the only schools worth looking at. So, be really random and mention all sorts of schools. And, you need to be involved, but again, only to a point. For the students, I guess I would say let your parents into this process, not just because they're going to be footing the bill in many cases, but they are your parents. They want to know how the process is going. Give them updates on the process. Keep the lines of communication open. Don't have them have to beg you for information about how it's going. They may be reluctant to, but you can be darn sure they're interested. And so, use them as a sounding board. They do know you better than most people in your life. Keep them abreast of, what you're doing and when you're going to take this and how the essay is going. And the final thing I would say is when it comes to talking about the college application process with your peers or friends at high school, you really do have total control over the level at which you participate in those conversations. Some of you may go to schools where college admission seems to be the only thing anybody wants to talk about, but that doesn't mean you have to talk about it. When SAT scores come out, if you got all 800s, nobody really wants to hear that. And if you got all 500s, you may not feel like talking about that with other people. And when they say to you, in either case, Sarah, how'd you do on your SATs? You can smile and say, I did fine, and then change the subject. And what you have just communicated to them is, I'm not going to have this conversation. And when they say, oh, how's your application going? And have you figured out your list yet? Again, think of some response that says, I'm not going to get wound up in this. This is my process, and I'm doing it, and I'm content with it. And so just realize that you do choose how much to participate in the culture of competition and college admissions, and just remember that.
Oh, thanks, guys. This is really, really good. I mean, it is really important you can't be completely stress-free when you're applying to college today, but it's really important. And the tips that Margit and Chris have shared with all of you are some of the best I've ever heard. So I hope you all take those to heart. Now we have something you've all been waiting for. We promised Margit this wasn't going to be a please, how can my child get into Yale webinar? So it's not. But people do always ask us, and so we're going to ask you, are the applications for the Ivy League schools different? Are Ivy League schools looking for something that other institutions are not? So Margit, take it away.
Well, first of all, I would point out that the Ivy League basically is an athletic conference. That's how it was founded in 1954, among a group of schools, 8 schools, that shared common academic standards and financial aid policies. But in the end, that's how it was founded, as an athletic conference. So, in that regard, we're not different from a lot of other schools. I think there are tremendous differences among the 8 Ivy League institutions. Each one of them is unique, and given those very pronounced differences among some of them, when I hear kids say, oh yeah, I'm applying to the Ivies, to me it immediately suggests a lack of reflection about each individual school's qualities. Because to lump them all together suggests that they're all the same, and they aren't. So I think that the application, the processes for reviewing applications can be a little bit different one to another. Most of us, maybe even all of us, use the common application, so that the applications themselves are not going to be terribly dissimilar. I think that each of us has our own additional essay and supplemental questions, so that those may be different. But I don't think that there's a secret to getting into an Ivy League school. Ivy Leagues, as well as others in this country, are highly selective, tough to get into simply because they have so many applicants. And I think what's most important, whether you're applying to Yale or Princeton or some school that's not as selective, the most important thing in any application is that you be as genuine and authentic and as thoughtful as possible. And you're the same person no matter where you're applying. You shouldn't be presenting yourself differently to an Ivy League school from a non-Ivy League school. You're trying to present who you are, and you should be the same person applying to Gettysburg as to Harvard. And I think conveying a sense of who you are is what is really important. There are other highly selective institutions, Stanford, Chicago, Duke, whatever, that will also have supplements and may or may not use the common application, and I don't think that you'll find their application experience different. So, again, I don't think that the applications for Ivy schools are different. We just happen to be very selective, but there are other very selective schools in the country as well. And I guess I would say that one of the important things to realize is that at most highly selective institutions in the country, there are no guarantees for admission, just given how many applicants they have and how many they'll be able to admit. And as long as students apply to schools across a range of selectivity, you should be fine in the spring. To apply to 7 Ivy League schools and the University of Arizona is not acknowledging that there are any other schools that might be a little bit less tough to get into, but still would be wonderfully challenging for you and would be great institutions. And so it's important to do your homework and find schools that you really like at each level of selectivity.
Okay. So on that note, Margit, how does Yale review applications?
Well, our first consideration is the academic profile of the student, because first and foremost we are an academic institution, and that would be looking at the high school performance over 4 years. We don't just look at the GPA or rank, because that doesn't tell us anything really. It tells us something, but it doesn't tell us what the rigor of the student's program, for instance, has been. And so we look at the rigor of courses that students have had in light of what's offered at the school. Some schools offer a lot of honors and APs, and some schools don't offer APs, so we don't look for them on the transcript. But we would say, well, have they taken the most rigorous courses that they could have taken? The standardized testing adds a piece of that academic profile, the academic comments by teachers, and so that's really the first consideration. And then everything else is second. The essays are very important in establishing that sense of sort of person. The letters of recommendation, as I mentioned before, talking about you both academically and personally, and your place within the community, and your interaction with peers, your leadership, or whatever. Maybe your sense of involvement outside of your high school in something that interests you. It's hard to get into highly selective institutions like Yale without getting pretty strong recommendations from your school, simply because so many students are applying who are very good students, and they're nice kids and they do things, and sometimes what tends to elevate some above others is the genuine enthusiasm that comes through every recommendation that's been written for them, and that may be enough to separate some students out.
Okay, that's great. Thank you to Chris and Margit. We have a ton of questions that we're going to be asking to both of our guests in just a few minutes. First, I wanted to let you know that we have many resources for those of you who are going to get off this webinar and start your essays tonight. We have several free resources. You'll get a survey after tonight's webinar that's going to include a link to a handout with key financial aid terms and definitions. And you can also come back to our website next week for free resources. There's a lot of stuff there. There's a free membership. There's other services, personal essay coaches, and just about anything that you need. Now, let's start with the questions. And the first one from Melissa. Are online applications better than mail-in ones, and is one preferred over the other? Chris, Margit, either one of you want to take a stab at this one?
I would say that online applications more and more and more is becoming the way to go. There are some schools, and we are one, that doesn't even have a paper application any longer. So many schools have shifted to online reading systems and online processing systems because they're just dramatically more efficient from a processing end. And there's so many more companies like the universal application, the common application, whatever, that offer online applications, that's really becoming just common. That said, when we used to receive more paper and had online, we didn't care. We scanned the paper, so we were still reading them all online. I will say that, you know, typing them, they tend to be easier to read. If you have lousy handwriting, you should definitely consider doing an online application rather than a paper one. But there's no, you don't get bonus points for doing one versus the other.
Okay. Chris, is yours only online?
We do provide PDFs, which you can certainly print out, but that's more for planning purposes. Just to
but you can't write on it; you have to type it.
You'd have to actually print it out and write on it if you wanted to. But the UCA member colleges certainly do prefer to receive them online so they can process them more easily. But we do have those PDFs up in our resources section. You know, just when you're starting to plan your application to see what you need to do. You know, both for you and for your recommenders.
I will just add one comment. There definitely are students in areas, particularly in some foreign countries, but also in some areas of the U.S., where students just may not have much access to a computer, you know, or many members of their family share one, or the family doesn't have one, they're using one at the school library or whatever. We will absolutely understand if those kinds of things will move people to using a paper application. I mean, that is one of the things that may have people send a paper. So I think schools are understanding that that's the case.
Okay. Chris, this one specifically. Do applications that come in first make any difference in an impression, or are they in any way advantageous? I'm not really reading this right. Do you understand that? So is it advantageous to send it in early?
I think it can be, but only to a point. You certainly want to give yourself as much time as possible to make sure that your recommendations and your essay are polished, that they're a good representation of you as a student, the student you currently are and the student you want to be to the institution that you're going to apply to. But, you know, is it better to submit on day one, you know, July 1st when we go live, compared to a couple of days before the deadline? Not in my experience, not from what our member colleges tell us. I don't know if Margit has a different opinion on that.
No, I would agree. I don't look at the submission date when I'm reading an application. You know, there are all sorts of reasons somebody might have applied early. There are all sorts of reasons somebody might apply on the deadline. I will say an awful lot of the college application submission happens within the week around the deadline. On the other hand, you don't necessarily want to be challenging a web server along with 500,000 other kids on the deadline. There are reasons not to be applying on the deadline, because occasionally there's server crashes, occasionally there are just technical challenges, and you haven't left yourself a lot of time to work those out. I think it can be helpful if you apply, sometime before the deadline, just to, make sure your file is set up, give you time to track document receipt and that sort of thing. But in terms of, will it give you an advantage in the admissions process, other than maybe helping to ensure your application becomes complete earlier, it doesn't matter.
Okay. Can one student have another recommender aside from the two teachers and school counselor? So does it have to be a teacher and school counselor?
If a college asks for a teacher recommendation, it needs to be a teacher recommendation. And if they ask for a counselor letter, I think that could be another school official. Sometimes a vice principal or a headmaster or something may write the school statement, but it needs to be a school administrator.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that answers that. Answer the question. Follow instructions. Can it be a letter from a teacher you had both freshman and sophomore year, but not junior year? Margit, I think these are for you.
If the school, I know on our application, or even on the common application, it says that it should be from junior or senior year. Actually, I don't remember if it says that on the common app. I know that we say that on our website. And so if we get a letter that's from 9th and 10th grade, we tend to wonder, so why is it that this student couldn't get a more recent teacher? Because you're growing so fast academically and intellectually in high school that you're not the same student in 12th grade that you were even in 10th grade. And so I would say you really should focus on 11th and 12th grade, or somebody you had sophomore year that you again have this year. It's just a more appropriate recommendation in terms of what the quality of your academic work is.
Well, what if it's a teacher who you had freshman year and sophomore year who then becomes your coach junior and senior year?
I would say that should be an additional letter of recommendation. It should not stand as one of the academic recommendations. The teacher recommendations need to be academic subject.
Okay.
And
again, follow the instructions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Parent involvement might be beneficial. I can't read that. In the case, there was a C missing. Beneficial in the case of students who have learning challenges, though. I don't know what the question is. I'm going to move on. How dangerous is it to express strong statements of faith in the application process? You can both try this one.
All right, Chris, you can go first.
I can answer this one.
Well, I think it's really about what best represents you as a person. Like Margie said, it's really about your voice. So if you feel, strongly enough about faith that is what your essay is about, or one of your essays is about, then that's what you should write.
I would say that I would agree that if religion in your life has been a very important part of your life, it is an absolutely okay topic to write about. But I think colleges aren't going to want to read about the religion. They're going to want to hear about you related to the religion. So I would say that the essays on faith at work do a very good job of conveying why my faith has been such an important part of my life. And I don't want to read so much about the religion itself, because it will make me feel like I'm reading the Bible or the Quran or something, and that doesn't tell me about you. I'm trying to get inside your head, and so if you can convey what your beliefs and your faith have, why they've played an important role in your life, and how you've grown, and why they remain a really central part of your life, and also, do you sound open-minded? Because there's some people who are so wrapped up in their religion, or frankly in social causes, or in something that they're passionate about, that they actually don't seem terribly open-minded. And for us to bring somebody to Yale who has deep faith, that can be wonderful. But if all they want to talk about is their faith and not listen to anybody else's and not have a discussion, but just proselytize, that is not attractive. And that's not appropriate for a university that's based on the sharing of ideas and the discussion of ideas and that sort of thing. But as a topic, it's not taboo at all.
And what we tell our students, which I think is in line with what both of you have said, is that topic is secondary. It's what you learned from anything you did, any topic that really matters, and that you show reflection. So, yeah, I actually like those I don't believe in God essays. Okay. Would I be able to explain why I did not take the most rigorous courses available? Okay. Margit?
I assume that means, well, I don't know whether that means, is there a place for me to explain that in the application, or do you think I could present an application that would seem appropriate and acceptable? So I'm not really
That's
sure.
what I think. Why don't you answer that one?
Okay. I think it depends. I think it depends. You know, the reality is that we're looking for an indication that students are ready to do the level of work that Yale will require of them. It's likely to be harder than most high schools have been, and more challenging than most students have probably encountered at high school, not all of them. And one of the indications of that is, what level of courses have you taken? How have you shown us that you're ready to really tackle tough courses? And if a student, if there are individual courses that a student wasn't able to take for a particular reason, that's absolutely appropriate to explain somewhere. A massive schedule conflict or something. But if at every level, when a student could have taken a tougher course, they didn't, then it isn't any individual course that is a problem, it's the pattern which would slow us down a little bit. Why is it that again and again, when this student had the option to take something a little more challenging or a little less challenging, they chose the latter? And what does that say about their interest in really being challenged academically? So it's, it never comes down to the presence or absence of one course or the level of one course. It's more, what's the pattern that we see on this transcript?
And if I may add, for that student, if you're not taking the most challenging courses, you might not want to apply to Yale. Is that fair, Margit?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think that some students perhaps really don't want to work quite as hard as you're going to have to work at Yale. I mean, it's hard. When you're surrounded by kids, all of whom are terribly bright and very curious and really want to work hard and want to do well, there's some students for whom that would not be an environment in which they would really thrive. And, the goal is for you to be in an environment where you truly will thrive, both academically and personally.
Right. We have so many questions. This is fabulous. We're going to try to get through as many as we can, and we can always try to answer them later, but maybe we can do it. Next, if you are applying for a specific major, does a teacher recommendation have to be from a teacher who teaches a subject relevant to that major, or any teacher? For example, if you're applying pre-med, can it be a Spanish teacher? It's a good question.
As far as we're concerned, yes. I mean, I would always say just like I would say, take the SAT 2 subject test that you think you'll do the best in, go to the teacher to write the best recommendations for you, because that will serve you best in the end. I think if somebody is applying, let's say, to an engineering program, or if there is actually a pre-med major at a school, we don't happen to have a pre-med major. Then if you got Spanish and English, the school might wonder, so interesting, how come this pre-engineering student didn't get a math or science recommendation? And that's a legitimate question. If you're interested in engineering, presumably math and science have been a serious part of your high school curriculum, and is there a reason that you couldn't get one of those teachers? So I would say, but in a lot of cases, you're not going to end up majoring in what you indicate anyway. If you're applying to a liberal arts college, not into the engineering school, but into simply a liberal arts college where you might major in engineering, but frankly you might go off in some other direction, I think it's going to matter less. And I would say getting the two strongest letters would serve you the best.
The next question, must the college essay follow the regular structure with a central idea and 3-point thesis statement? Would you mind if I answer that, Margit?
Yes, certainly.
Okay. The answer is it should not. It should not. You need no structure in your college essay. If you follow a process of reflection, your structure will just emerge. But go ahead, Margit. You can.
Yeah, I would echo that. This is not an English assignment. You are not writing an English paper. In fact, don't even try, because it will end up being more academic and therefore more dry. You can start in the middle of an experience, just like a lot of the best novels you've ever read have sucked you in on page 1. You don't need to have an introductory paragraph where you tell them what you're going to tell them, and then three paragraphs telling, and then 1 paragraph telling them what you told them. I mean, that doesn't often make for really interesting writing. So you can start in the middle of something. You can start wherever you want. You can end wherever you want. Again, it's supposed to feel personal, and that means it should be guided by your own style of writing and your personality.
Okay. I think that about sums up our questions for the evening. At this point, I'd like to thank our guests. You were both fabulous. Chris, you still there?
I'm still here.
Oh, great. I'm happy. And we're just going to wrap up a little bit. For more information on WOW, you can go to our website, get free membership, including interviews with many other admission representatives. If you or anyone you know would like to hear a recording of today's session, please join us at the gold or $49 level for access to this and many great other webinars. And of course, we have many levels of personal essay coaching and services available to use our WOW method. For professional guests and consultants and counselors, we offer services to support your students as well. And we have several free options for schools that we're going to be announcing in the next month. So we're here to help. Our guests have been here to help, and this has been great. So we're going to stay on the line for a few more minutes if anybody has any questions. Let's see if we have any more. What's the hypothetical? We have a couple more questions, maybe for our guests. If hypothetically, if I were to have a recommendation from a professor in a specific college, should I have the professor email the admissions office, or should I have them send the recommendation through other applications?
I don't think it really matters. If a student wants that to be a supplemental letter, and a college limits a student to 2 teacher recommendations, let's say through the common application, then that teacher can't submit it through the common application. It would only be, you could only submit it if that faculty member's recommendation was meant to stand as one of your 2 required letters. But that could also be sent directly from directly as a supplemental letter. I do think that it's better for them to send it directly to the school, to the college.
Okay.
And those are the same instructions that we give students.
Those are great. And Chris, do you want to tell our guests tonight some of, if you want to name 5 of the most selective schools that use the Universal app, this is a good time to do that.
Okay.
Give a shout out to the Universal app.
So I think right now we have about 44 colleges live, with some going through testing, but some names you may recognize are Princeton, Harvard, Cornell, University of Chicago, Vanderbilt, Johns Hopkins, which is where I went, great institution, Duke, and a few others. And you can certainly find a full list by going to universalcollegeapp.com. It's right on your left-hand side when you go to the front page.
And Margit, everybody on the webinar tonight, they're going to get into the Yale, right?
I don't know. Are they?
I don't know. I'm just kidding around. Thank you so much. This has been really, really fabulous. Great questions, great interviews. You 2 were. This was better than we could have expected.
Thank you.
And I think we can. I think our guests can head out and go to sleep, go for a walk, do whatever you need to do. But thank you so much, and we look forward to a really great season. It's going so well. So kids, go home and start working on your applications before school starts. You won't be sorry.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.